Support for Donnybrook is provided in part by Design Air Heating and Cooling.
Seems fair to me. Well, if you don't know what fair is, you can't make it. Unacceptable by any reason.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.
Thank you for joining us for what is really an extraordinary week in St. Louis. We have a ton of topics. So without further ado from me, let's meet the panelists and then get cranking. She's the media veteran herself, Wendy Wiese. Back from vacation, Bill McClellan from the Post-Dispatch. From St. Louis Magazine, the 314 podcast, and her daily newsletter, Sarah Fenske. And from the St. Louis American, we welcome Alvin Reid. Well, Wendy, last week we were talking about data centers in general. Should there be a moratorium? St. Charles said no to them for at least 1 year. And then as soon as we were off the air, seemingly, it was announced that the St. Louis Armory is the target of some developers who would like to put a data center there. Data centers, of course, these big buildings that have computer services, cooling stations. They use a lot of electricity. They also use a lot of water. And this Armory is that huge brick building that's just south of 6440 near Grand. It's where Arthur Ashe and Ken Flack and Jimmy Connors used to play tennis, and Ike and Tina Turner used to perform there. Do you think that should be this historic building should be turned into a data center?
I know that this is going to make me very unpopular with my table mate over here, but I do. And not only that, the moratorium was sort of pushed off the table and an executive order was brought to the table. So they both have sort of the same result in mind, which is making sure Megan Green wants to make sure that all of the surrounding businesses and residents have enough time to discuss this issue and to have those public input opportunities. I don't want to see us lose the use of the Armory. I think its days in terms of entertainment, I think is an entertainment venue. When you think of the Foundry and how successful it's been just down the highway, I don't think that's going to work. But don't hit me too hard. I would be okay with using it as a data center, assuming that we can cross the T's and dot the I's with St. Louis University.
Go ahead. I've been jumping at the bit here. Wendy, you're killing me. This is the heart of the city right here. And we have the Foundry that is so successful. And we're saying, okay, we're going to take this historic building and we're going to put a $1.5 billion data center in there. This is bigger than the one that was proposed in St. Charles. And basically, you're going to knock it offline from being any purpose that would add vibrancy, that would get people into the heart of the city, that would be a use that might draw tourists or other visitors. You're basically saying we're going to have like 6 guys kind of monitoring these giant machines and using electricity. It seems like the worst possible place for this.
Well, on the other hand, Sarah, we don't want that building to be an abandoned building. I don't know. I don't know what would you put in it.
Pickleball.
Okay, thank you, Charlie.
I
had no idea.
I'm not totally anti data center, but not there. We got to use that for an entertainment purpose, I think. Just because these last folks failed, because they failed at a lot of things apparently, that doesn't mean that the concept of it being some kind of hub of entertainment doesn't work. And I would rather see it as that. And Charlie, it's Kirkwood's own Ken Flock.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Did he win Wimbledon?
It doubles.
Doubles.
I know he won doubles.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad we can talk about the important issues here.
No.
In all seriousness,
it's a historic building. It was designed by Albert Osberg, who also did Homer G. Phillips and the Soulard Market. And so, and when you take a look at it, it's just a beautiful thing that, and the Brookline Brookline Greenway is going to go right by there, so people will be able to pedal on their bike and take a look at, oh, look, there's a big building that does nothing.
Well, back
Well,
in
now, if you
the
owned the foundry, would you want that to be a?
They shouldn't have any
rival?
say. They should not have any
but
say.
Well,
It
I'm
could
just
be.
saying-
It could be annexed if you all dash the dreams that I have of the data center. I suppose it could be. You could somehow maybe annex it as part of the foundry, just a little
that's
bit down there.
possible.
But I used to go to softball games back there, or back in the 70s
I'll be
at
darned.
the Armory.
This
Yeah.
data center is going to be so big, it won't just be the Armory. They also want to build a giant building in an adjacent vacant lot. And I'm all for getting rid of vacant lots. I'm all for not having vacant buildings. But I think this is absolutely the wrong use. And what I worry about, they'll get locked in for some multi-year contract, and it'll end up empty, after this AI bubble bursts.
Well, Sarah, while we're talking about the city of St. Louis and development, it was announced this week by the mayor and Talby Roach, I think CEO of Bi-State, which operates MetroLink, that there will not be a MetroLink extension that goes from north to south. Originally, it was going to go from North County to South County. Then they shortened it to maybe Fairgrounds Park to Shoto. Well, right now, they don't feel they can get the federal dollars for it, and at $1 billion, there's no way they could pay for it locally. So they're thinking about buses. You've been on this program before saying, why not have buses?
Yeah, I think buses are the best use of this money. I think the writing has been on the wall ever since Donald Trump got elected, ever since Kara Spencer got elected. He doesn't want to pay for these type of projects. She thought this was a bad use. If you look at the cost per mile of what this light rail line had been, and especially in terms of the paltry people who would be trying to get from this corridor to that corridor, it never made any sense. This is a chance to go back to the drawing board and do something that does bus rapid transit.
Well, Charlie, we talk all the time. Where are the people going? They're going west. I've said all along, if you run a MetroLink line from east to west, if you build it, they will come. And you go to the municipalities along the way. You stop off in Webster and say, like, hey, you got this little quaint little train station right here. What if the MetroLink stopped here? Kirkwood's got a train station. Amtrak stops there.
Yeah.
You build it a stop at a time, and just given the opportunity, you don't have to drive, you don't have to park. All you got to do is get on, ride down, go to the ball game, do this, do that. I still think it would work east-west, but we never consider that.
Well, it might have worked at one time, Alvin. I think you
Agreed.
have a good point. But now these things have become so prohibitively expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you, Sarah, that this idea of that 5 or 7, 8 mile thing is ridiculous. But I don't think we can afford to build one going west now.
Well, but
I-
could
there's
you,
a
in
in the
lot
middle of
of-
Highway 40?
But could you not, each municipality along the way, if you were going to have a stop, you've got some transportation funding coming to your municipality, just like St. Louis does. Could you give some of that money to this project? And it's bringing shoppers, it's bringing recreation, it's bringing
They're
people
not going to want these people coming from the city. This is going to be like what happened when they wanted to take it out to St. Charles.
No, I'm not talking about St. Charles. Now, ultimately, St.
West
Charles
County,
will
you think West County is different?
Yes, and ultimately, St.
It
Charles
should
will
go to St.
ask
Charles,
to get
yes.
in, just like, you know what, it's Centerville and parts west on the Orange Line in the Washington, D.C. area, wanted no part of it. It stopped in Vienna, Virginia. 10 years later, begging to get in on
Yeah,
it.
but-
Same thing would
But
happen.
that part of the
There's
world
so
is
much-
Northern Virginia is growing, and St. Louis is not.
No,
West-
but
West
Westplex,
County
the
is.
Westplex and Wentzville and O'Fallon and all of those areas, they are exploding.
And they definitely have traffic up there. But when you take a look at the history of MetroLink, which opened in June of 1994, right?
Yeah.
What's happened to downtown since? What's happened to Clayton since? Clayton used to have people on the sidewalks. It was vibrant, not anymore.
But we
doesn't-
could use the Armory as a big parking lot for
No, actually, the hub should be at Chesterfield Mall.
I mean, look, the people
I'm
that are
serious.
buying big houses
I've
in
got this
West
thought
County
out. Let me
do
tell
not
you.
want to take public transit. For the most part, they're not working downtown. The jobs are all over the place right now, and these are not public transit users.
But Sarah, if you could get from, let's say, Chesterfield to Kirkwood, forget downtown, people would find where they wanted to stop, shop, do
All
stuff
right.
like that.
Well, let me ask you about another form of transportation, aircraft, Alvin Reid. It was announced by Boeing this week that they're going to send some of the upgrade work on the FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jet from St. Louis, Berkeley to be exact, to either Florida or Texas. It's either going to be Jacksonville or San Antonio. Was this a sign that Boeing, which is now experiencing the 8th week of a strike with the machinists and aerospace workers, and which has gotten some flack from local politicians in recent years, that maybe it's getting a little fatigued with the St. Louis area?
Well, I mean, I'm all for the workers. You know, if you feel you got to strike, then you strike. And people go on strike in Seattle. We're not the only people that have had issues with Boeing. We're just having ours right now. Now, as I said, I've always been doubtful that this Donald Trump paper plane is going to get built in the St. Louis area. I just have my doubts about that. I don't think Boeing is as tired of St. Louis as Boeing is trying to, make a profit. And I've been to Jacksonville, okay? Trust me, the workers down there are making less than the ones are in St. Louis, union or not. So they'll save money doing that. So I don't think they got a thumb on St. Louis. I just think they're trying to go someplace where it's cheaper to do the thing.
Well, and there's still going to be FA-18 jobs here in St. Louis, even if they do move some of them to Florida or Texas. I just think that I think that this was a bad time for a strike. In terms of, and I'm a union member myself, so I usually wouldn't say that, but I just think Boeing has had a very difficult decade, and I think that this was just not worth the brass.
I suspect they would have done it anyway.
You think?
I don't really think this is because of the strike. I think Alvin has a good point.
Yep.
They're looking to save money, and I think I'm with you, Alvin. I'm with the workers on their complaints against Boeing.
Except the workers are divided because their leadership keeps recommending that they ratify these contracts, and twice they haven't. I kind of wonder if the workers are really upset with the two-tier system that goes back to 2014, and they don't like the guy sitting next to them making so much money.
Well, I mean, that's part of it, but also this thing where the leadership of the union wants to get the deal done, but the workers don't. Once again,
that's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. All for one and one for all, and the leadership is not with us. Then you need to change leadership.
Well, they're getting a 38% increase.
I get it. And you look at those numbers. You say,
it's not Donnybrook money, but it's good money.
I know that's one of those. You look at the money, right? You're like, whoa.
I'm with the workers too. Yeah. It's just a very difficult time, and I don't like the fact that our leaders keep bad-mouthing Boeing. Josh Hawley from the well of the Senate, and then you have Cori Bush, the former congresswoman. Every chance she got, she bad-mouthed it, and then we have the president of the board of Alderman who's protesting against Boeing. She gets arrested or something. I mean, how many local leaders do we need to badmouth Boeing before Boeing rises up?
I'm not a big fan of our local leaders, but I don't think this is what's driving Boeing's decision either. I don't think if Megan Green liked Boeing, they wouldn't be sending.
I just want to make sure that I locate my microphone, and if the President of the United States is listening to Donnybrook, Mr. Brennan was being ironic, Mr. President. Really making it.
Wendy, let me ask you. I thought it was going to end last week when we talked about a teacher in the Dunklin School District, Rachel Taylor, who lost her job after something she posted. All right, it didn't end there. Turns out there's Mary Adams from the Columbia High School in Illinois and Linnell Gilpin from North Point Middle School in the Wentzville School District. Both of them, well, one is on leave. The other one was suspended and then forced to resign, and over rather innocuous posts on social media. They were not on company time. They were not on campus. They were not acting in the official position as a teacher. Do we still live in America?
We do still live in America, but we live in an America where, as I said last week, the freedom of speech also is wrapped in responsibility. If your employer or if employers that are in the same business that you're in are firing people for posting on social media anything having to do with the assassination of a 31-year-old political activist, then read the room. Read the room and just know that there is a possibility. And I don't ever want to make it sound like I'm taking anybody's job, haphazardly or lackadaisically. And I think it's terrible that they're losing their jobs. But that's the cost of freedom of speech at this particular time if you work for a school district.
I think what's going on here is a lot scarier because I think these employers are terrified of catching the attention of the federal government. So I think this does go back to the First Amendment because I think Trump has made this idea that if you're not properly mourning Charlie Kirk, that your employer could be in trouble. UMSL put out this guidance right after Vice President Vance made some comments about, if university employees are talking about Charlie Kirk Kirk's death like they're glad about it. Well, maybe those universities should lose their funding. Well, naturally, Mun Choi the next day sent out this directive saying, hey, we don't want you to say anything that could cause turmoil in the workplace. It's not about turmoil in the workplace. It's about the federal government coming after these companies.
Sure, and it's completely free speech. I mean, Charlie Kirk, I knew very little about him until he was killed, but Charlie Kirk was free to criticize Dr. Martin Luther King,
sure,
and no one said take him off the air. And so if someone wants to criticize Charlie Kirk, I just don't see where that person should lose their job. I'm with you, Wendy, on, people have to be careful. These are perilous times. But nobody should lose their job for...
I agree, and I don't think we're saying, like, these people should be fired for doing it. Right. I'm just saying, like, you have to be wary of what is going on. Now, case in point here, I think if, especially I guess the first one we talked about, who basically had some, like, biblical reference. If she had written that as a letter to the editor, to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, and it was, published as, like, where the letters to the editor are, I don't think she would have got fired. It's the social media aspect of it. And that's what I'm telling people. So like, look, that is dynamite. Leave it alone. Just leave it alone. I know people get caught up in it and say, I can't believe they said this. Right? And they may be just crazy thoughts that you feel like you need to respond to. Stay off of it. Stay silent on it. Leave it alone.
But to be precise, Linnell Gilpin wrote that the Lord does not look kindly upon people who are misogynistic, racist, or homophobic.
Yes.
And she got fired for that. She didn't mention Kirk by name. The other woman, Mary Adams, apparently truncated his quote, and some people found that objectionable. And I just think in both of those cases, whether it was social media or the Post-Dispatch or wherever, it doesn't seem like a firing offense.
I agree with you. But just here, what I'm saying is, it seems like I think you all agree, at least how you look, that, if that had just been a simple letter to the editor, especially back in the days when you actually wrote letters to the editor, that they wouldn't have lost their jobs. I think they lost their jobs because it's social media.
I think you do make a really good point here, and I hadn't thought of it that way. But it does feel like the temperature is so hot online, and at the same time, you feel like you're part of this giant ocean where everyone's commenting and you're having this conversation, and really somebody can just screen grab what you say and like send it viral, even when, again, as you say, it's super innocuous. So social media is the problem, but I also think we should all take a step back, and employers should stop coming after people this hard for what is really
I talked to some young friends and said, this is not something these are perilous times. Yeah. The companies are scared to death. And you put something on social media, just don't do it.
And if he was polarizing, and it's a very confusing situation because there's plenty of evidence out there to suggest that he, some of the things that he was saying had been perhaps misconstrued or overemphasized, or it depends on, how you're receiving it or which prism you're looking through. But at no time in my life have we ever rejoiced in an assassination. And that is what is happening in social media in this white hot, and that should make school districts.
Well, people are getting in trouble for not rejoicing, just not mourning. I mean, making a comment that the ones I've seen, people aren't rejoicing. There might be ironic about he was against gun control, but they're not rejoicing.
But you admit that there has been plenty of that.
But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, there's been plenty of that.
Why? If anybody is rejoicing, if anybody is just like saying that he should be, a saint now, what does it matter if it's on that nonsense that we call social media? I mean, just because somebody, it's on the X and it's on this and it's on the that, it has no credence until we make it say it does. This is the part that I don't understand.
It was J.D. Vance, the vice president, who said, kind of turn in people and turn in their employers. Let's go after them if they're not highly respectful for Charlie Kirk. And so people went out and they started outing people, even on a private Facebook page, someone turned as a traitor or something and decided.
That's right out of Eastern Europe. That's
is.
authoritarianism, turning in people.
Okay.
All right, okay, we got to move on. Bill, we're going to go to you on our next topic, but before we get to the topic, you started this program in 1987 with Mark Vittert.
I did.
Who worked on this program till about 2001, one of the founders of Donnybrook. Well, people watching the show didn't know at the time that he was going through a lot of struggles and challenges at home with his son. And his son, Leland, has just written a book about it, and he's going to talk about it Saturday night at the St. Charles City County Library. So for longtime Donnybrook viewers, if you want to prize yourself, that's Saturday night in St. Charles.
That's a full
And a
circle.
worthwhile read, for sure.
I think so, too. I want to ask you, Bill, about the NGA, the National Geospatial Agency, which is moving its 3,000 employees from South St. Louis to North St. Louis, and I believe the opening is tomorrow. There was a front page story in your paper that there's no economic rebound in North St. Louis yet because of the NGA, even though it was heralded as a major development that would really bring new life to that area. What do you think?
Oh, I don't think it'll bring new life to that area. If it does, it won't be good for the people who live there now. I mean, there might be gentrification, and the people who live there now will get pushed out, and some developer will put up expensive homes, and it'll be much like the fight downtown between the well-to-do loft dwellers and the homeless who used to be there. I mean, I don't think any good is going to come to the neighborhoods around the NGA. I wish I did, but I don't see how it will happen.
I think it would be cool if they made all 3,000 people like march from the old place to the new place. I thought that would kind of be cool, you know. But I'm with Bill. Also, you know, when you go to Jefferson and Cass, all right, and just in the surrounding neighborhood around there, your first thought is, boy, it's going to turn this place around. You're just going to think of like, you know, oh, okay. And people said that from day one. So this is just, you know, the fruition of what was already known, that it's really not going to have that big an impact unless you bulldoze the entire area around it and start anew. Yep. And I'm not wanting that to be done, but I think that's what would have to be done.
Let's wait until we open the doors. Right.
We poo-poo on things long before we.
Yeah. I mean, things could change. Things could actually turn out in a positive way.
I don't know. I'm really skeptical. I'm actually skeptical that we're even going to see gentrification around this thing. It is a bunker. It's by design a bunker, and there's supposed to be some sort of like not a moat, but like a buffer zone between them and other development. Yeah, I don't know why I had that in my head, but
alligators.
It just doesn't seem like the kind of development that is likely to spur a lot of like office workers on the street, hanging out, shopping at cute little boutiques. They're going to just be driving in. They're going to be like, all right, I'll eat my lunch at my desk like people do in the year 2025. And then at the end of the day, I'm going to drive out of here. I don't see how this helps the neighborhood at all.
I don't mean to make light of it.
Sure.
I wish it was going to help, but it's just going to make the lines at Crown Candy impossible. Seriously.
I hope it helps.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Yeah.
You know, the one aspect of it that I found incredulous, and it's true, the employees there don't have to pay the earnings tax, or rather the earnings tax that most people who work in the city of St. Louis pay, 1% by the employer, 1% by the worker, usually goes to the city of St. Louis. It's going to go back to the NGA, which is the federal government. So the city of St. Louis is subsidizing this.
Yeah.
So that's bad, but I guess the only thing that would be worse, I know they were talking about moving this thing to like the cornfields of Illinois.
Right.
I'm glad they didn't do that. Like, this is good for Missouri that these are staying here, even though maybe not so great for the city.
Maybe. Alvin, what about 1 million people not showing up at Busch Stadium? I think after the past 2 years, attendance is down by a cool 1 million.
It was funny that we've talked about, oh man, I was going to the game, until I read that story and saw that number. I'm like, 1 million people. That got my attention. Now, I don't own the Cardinals, but I would be thinking to myself, like, okay, we heard you loud and clear. We got to do better. Now, part of doing better is how do we get younger people? How do we get more diverse? When I go to the ball game, I've gone all over the country. Busch Stadium is still one of the least diverse places to watch a ball game that I've gone to in the country. How do we change that? How do we bring new fans into the game? And I don't mean they have to be 11 and 12 years old.
You got to win.
Yeah. Well, that would help. But also, what do we do? What do people want other than the St. Louis Cardinals. And other places have come to grips with
Yeah,
that.
a lot of people, though, have been discussing the fact that in a generational sense, the caboose is visible from where we're sitting. That kids just aren't they're not as rabid about America's pastime as they used to be. And you said the same thing about your daughters, right?
Yeah, no, they're not interested in baseball because it's not on TV in our house, and it's because we're not going to pay $2,000 a year for a package to watch it. I think they've sort of cut their own fan base.
And kids aren't playing it. I mean, they're still with teams and adults in charge and everything. But you go to playgrounds and you don't see kids out there playing.
Pickup games.
Even on the hill where Yogi Berra and Garagiola were at Berra Park, you don't see kids playing ball.
Sarah, with 30 seconds to go, did Chris Zimmerman of the Blues take a shot at the Cardinals this week?
He would certainly say he didn't. However, everyone in that media event was like, whoa. He said, people just can't wait for hockey. They can't wait to see some success. And it's like, oh, in contrast to what, Chris?
He said people are desperate for success, any kind. So I'm thinking, was he talking to the mayor and the Cardinals? And it was like, I looked at Sarah. She looked at her.
Did anybody say shots fired? I mean,
And people still do write letters, Alvin, and we're going to go to those right now. The time has come to have at least 2 women on every Donnybrook. Wendy's amazing, but she must be tired of speaking for half the population. Comments? Sarah? Wendy? And from Jim Merkel of Bevo Mill, author Jim Merkel. We also heard from Sue Casso of South City. How much space does a data center need? Retrofitting has to be less expensive than new construction. The AT&T building sits with 250,000 square feet of space that is already fitted for water, electricity, climate control, parking. Why shouldn't this kind of adaptive reuse be welcome? Thank you, Ms. Casso. And Jerry Beckman writes, really, Charlie? Bob Clark is not a civic treasure. Being good at one thing does not make one good at everything. Well, Jerry, go check out the library in the county. The Clark family branch. Care of 9PBS. You can write these letters, 63108. Don't forget those emails, Donnybrook@9pbs.org. And on social media, use hashtag DonnybrookSTL. Call the 9 line, won't you, at 314-512-9094. And we hope you listen to us on your favorite podcast source. Don't forget our program Last Call, found on the 9PBS YouTube channel. We're going to talk about golf carts in the city of St. Louis. Should they be regulated? And who exactly should be able to march in the homecoming parade this weekend at Mizzou? That and more. We'll see you next week at this time. Thanks.
Donnybrook is made possible by the support of the Betsy and Thomas Patterson Foundation and the members of 9PBS.